Today's Christmas reading comes from the book My Mountains, My People by John Paris. There's he holly and she holly. Darkness spread down from the hills, and the old woodsman watched the night chase the last shadows away. In that magic moment of cold blue twilight, when earth and sky meld their colors, there was something about him that reminded you of the jovial, benevolent carrier of the Christmas message. Perhaps it was the way he laughed, deep down and lusty and rolling, or maybe it was the white hair and white mustaches, the rosy tint of his round face, the shortness and the plumpness of him, the elfish twinkle of his blue eyes. There was a feeling that if he had half a mind to, he could whistle up his reindeer, and that the suit of blue denim he wore was really a garment of red trimmed with ermine. Something tugged at you, something seen and yet something not really seen, trying to pull you back there to the barn where the crude sled with its hand-hewn runners had been drawn with its load of hickory logs. Was it really just a little old sled like your grandfather used to bring wood from the hills long ago? Or was it a handsome sleigh waiting to be piled high with the things many a boy and girl expected? The old woodsman laid aside his axe, and we moved into the cabin and took a chair before the fire. On a table in the corner, like a parade out of Noah's Ark, a host of wood carvings stood at attention. A fox, a bear, a rabbit, a horse, a turtle. And there was an angel carved from holly. The feeling was still there, and you expected a host of little men in green with turned-up shoes to come marching out of the deep shadows. The old woodsman stretched out his short legs, and the firelight danced on his face and on his white mustaches and his white hair. "Christmas holly," he said. "You want to know about Christmas holly and mistletoe? Well, there's a plenty if a feller knows where to look for it. I reckon if I was a mind to, I could steer you to just about the prettiest holly you ever laid your eyes on. Now, I ain't saying I won't, but I know where there's holly, the likes that few eyes have ever seen." "Trouble is," he said, that elfish twinkle in his eyes, "folks have got so they don't appreciate the things that grow in the woods, and I ain't about to see the pretty things destroyed." He took the angel from the table. "Carved it out of holly," he said, "white like it should be. Carved it here by the fire at nights when I had nothing else to do but sit and think back. And thinking back sometimes ain't good for a man. So I took my knife and I whittled it out, just like you see it, wings and all. Whittled it out to give to the boy here, maybe." He turned to the boy who sat at his feet, eyes worshiping the man in the cane-bottomed chair. The boy was 12. He had come to live with the old man when he was small, and like the woodsman, he knew the name of every tree that grew in the woods. He knew because the old woodsman had told him where the holly was best and how a boy could get mistletoe. The things that the woodsman carved with his pocket knife were wondrous things in the eyes of the boy, who somehow talked as a child and lived as a man. The boy did not expect things that he did not earn, and to him Christmas, which was coming up, would be a time when he and the old woodsman could rest before the fire and talk, man talk. Somehow you knew that the old woodsman and the boy would see Christmas a little different from most folks. There would be no trees with glittering lights. There would be none of the things that most boys and girls would expect to find under the tree. But looking at the boy and the old woodsman, you knew that to them Christmas would be sort of special, that just being together would make it something that few folks ever feel. "Me and the boy," said the old woodsman, "we know where there is more holly and more mistletoe growing natural-like than folks have ever seen. It's pretty growing out there in the hills. That's where it should stay. Like I say, folks don't appreciate it. They come in and tear limbs off the trees and go away, and the tree becomes like a dwarf, all deformed, and maybe die. I cut a little holly for my friends, and I use some of the wood to make a few things like that angel. It's the prettiest wood in the world, and it's a blessing that it don't grow no bigger than it does, or else all the holly would have been destroyed long ago. For 40 years I was an axeman. I worked for men that cut trees all over. You might say I helped to fell the biggest trees there was in these parts. But I've got a feeling for trees now. Did you ever stop to think what the world would be like if there wa'n't no trees? It'd be a sorry sight. Every year, more and more folks come out from the cities and towns and gather holly. They rip it off the limbs. It'd be just as easy if they sawed them off with an axe. Tearing off the limbs leaves them open to disease and death. For a moment he was silent, staring into the fire. Holly is prettiest a-growing out in the woods, he said finally. When you run on a whole bunch of holly just a-growing there like God meant for it to, why, there's nothing like it. Sure, I know, folks have got so they got to have holly at Christmas, and as long as they can get to it easy, like they'll get it made and make wreaths and use it for Christmas trees. If you notice, all the holly's about gone from along the highways, been stripped by folks at Christmas time, but there's still a lot of it here in the mountains, way back where folks don't go. Seems to me like I've never seen the berries so red and full as they are now. Maybe it's because I'm getting old and they look sort of different. Some folks remember things they've seen years ago as different, like they ain't what they once was. But I see things a-putting out like they never put out before. Maybe it's because I'm getting on in years and I've got a sort of feeling for everything that grows about me. Guess you didn't know there was he holly and she holly. Well, there is, only she holly has berries. You hear folks talk about years when there ain't no berries on the trees. They're folks that don't know nothing about the woods. They just happen to see he holly. Some years the she holly don't bear as heavy as others, but you'll never find a she holly without berries. They're bearing heavy this year. You asked me about mistletoe. Well, there's a plenty of it too. Seems like there's more mistletoe than I can ever remember seeing. Now, mistletoe is something that a body can get all he wants 'cause it seems to just keep a-growing no matter how much you gather. Seems to me like every oak I look up in has got a passel of it growing. There's plenty of berries on it this year, too. Reckon you know mistletoe ain't easy to come by. Hardest thing in the world to get. Grows right in the top branches of oak. Some folks shoot it out with a gun, but they lose most of the berries if they ain't good shots. Now, if you've got a boy like the one here, he can skin up a tree and bring it down. Did you ever hear that mistletoe was good for the toothache? I never tried it, but I've heard that it is. Some of the old-timers said they learned it from the Indians. If you had a toothache, you get some mistletoe and chewed the berries and it stopped the pain right quick. For a moment, the woodsman looked into the fire. Now, I can get you some holly, he said. That is, if you won't ask to go along with me to where I get it. It'll be full of berries, the reddest you ever saw, and the prettiest. Won't get much, but it'll be enough for your needs. Make a pretty thing for you. The boy tugged at the old woodsman's knee. You'll let me go with you, won't you, Henry? He said. I want to get a piece of pure holly and carve me an angel like the one you whittled out. And Henry Alexander, the old woodsman with the white hair and the white mustaches, nodded his head and smiled at the boy. In that moment, you had the feeling that this was the house where the Christmas spirit was always a part of life. And in the flickering firelight, the shadows danced upon the face of a little man who reminded you of the jovial, benevolent carrier of the Christmas message.